Welcome to What If, a channel where we imagine the impossible, explore wild scenarios, and ask the big questions about our world. Ready? Let's dive in. The year is 2025, not as you know it. Gaze upon the cityscape, not steel and glass, but marble and reinforced concrete, towering over meticulously planned avenues. The language on every street sign, every public broadcast is Latin, not the ancient tongue of scholars, but a living, evolving language spoken by billions. Your smart device, the Codex Digitalis, glows with imperial decrees updated from the eternal city. For 2 millennia, the eagle has never fallen. Its shadow stretches across every continent, every ocean, a perpetual twilight of imperial order. You are a citizen of the Imperium Romanum, and your world, your entire history, is fundamentally different. But what if we could peer into that alternate history? What if the Roman Empire never fell? Imagine the moment, not a single dramatic battle, but a series of averted catastrophes. A series of stronger emperors, perhaps. A strategic economic reform preventing the inflationary spirals that plagued the later empire. The crucial frontier defenses, often breached by Germanic tribes, hold. The legions, bolstered by continuous innovation in logistics and metallurgy, maintain a stronger, more cohesive line. The Western Empire, instead of fragmenting into dozens of kingdoms, remains a unified entity. The splintering that gave rise to independent cultures and rivalries across Europe simply doesn't happen. This continuous, centralized power, while bringing stability, acts like a colossal gravitational anchor. Without the competitive pressure of disparate kingdoms vying for technological or cultural supremacy, the explosive intellectual ferment of the Renaissance, the very rebirth of new ideas, is muted. Instead of a rapid succession of independent universities and patron-supported innovations, progress becomes institutionalized, slow, and meticulously controlled by the Imperial Academy. Imagine a colossal river diverted into a vast, slow-moving canal system rather than allowed to carve its own myriad paths across a delta. The water still flows, but the dynamic, erosion-driven creation of new landscapes is gone. Centuries turn into millennia. The Roman Empire, now the Imperium Aeternum, expands. Not through rapid conquest driven by immediate need, but through a patient, almost geological accretion of territory. Without competing European colonial powers, the Americas are discovered, perhaps by a Roman expedition in the 10th or 12th century, not the 15th. Africa and Asia are brought under the eagle's sway by sheer, overwhelming, long-term application of imperial will. The globe becomes a tapestry woven with a single thread. The rich diversity of independent national identities, languages, and philosophies that defined our timeline is replaced by a vast, uniform Roman cultural hegemony. This is a planetary ecosystem with a single dominant species, a colossal banyan tree whose roots and branches spread across the entire globe, suffocating all other growth beneath its immense canopy. The Roman Empire, by its very nature, was pragmatic. Its engineering was monumental, its bureaucracy efficient. But without the pressures of competing powers, without the need to out-innovate a rival, the trajectory of technology takes a fundamentally different path. Perhaps the steam engine, known in rudimentary forms even in antiquity, isn't developed for industrial applications for another 1,000 years, seen merely as a parlor trick or a powerful pump. The printing press, a catalyst for intellectual revolution in our timeline, might remain a niche technology, tightly controlled to prevent the spread of subversive ideas. Imagine a complex labyrinth where a single dominant path is carved deep and wide, while countless other potential avenues for exploration are left overgrown and forgotten. The Dark Ages, so often maligned in our history, were a period of decentralized, bottom-up experimentation. Rome, unbroken, prevents that vital fragmentation. Ultimately, this unbroken empire leads to a society of immense scale, but potentially limited dynamism. It is a world of incredible order, sophisticated infrastructure, and universal law, but perhaps one where individual innovation is stifled, where dissent is efficiently suppressed, and where the weight of tradition overshadows radical progress. It is a vast, perfectly oiled machine, running with incredible efficiency, but its very perfection makes it resistant to fundamental change. The new normal is an ancient future, a perpetually young past where the sun never truly sets on the Roman Empire, but perhaps casts an eternal, unchanging shadow over the human spirit. To understand this, we must think of history not as a simple narrative, but as a complex adaptive system. Imagine a vast, intricate neural network. In our timeline, the fall of Rome was like a massive trauma, forcing the network to prune, reroute, and eventually grow entirely new connections, sparking new centers of thought and innovation. But in this alternate reality, that trauma never occurred. The existing pathways, though robust, never faced the pressure to reinvent themselves entirely. Consider the biological principle of punctuated equilibrium. This idea suggests that evolution doesn't always proceed slowly and steadily, but often through long periods of stasis, interrupted by rapid bursts of change, often triggered by environmental stress or extinction events. The fall of Rome was, in a sense, a societal extinction event for a particular political structure, clearing the ecological niche for new forms to emerge. Without that extinction, the existing species, the Roman state, simply continued its slow, incremental refinement, never experiencing the radical speciation that gave rise to diverse European nations. Another analogy? Think of a single point of failure in a complex network. In our world, the Roman Empire's collapse decentralized power, creating thousands of redundant nodes. If one kingdom failed, others would rise. This distributed system, though chaotic at times, proved incredibly resilient and fertile for diverse ideas. But an unbroken Roman Empire becomes the ultimate single point of failure. Its sheer scale means immense stability, but also immense vulnerability if the core itself is ever threatened. It's like a vast, ancient mainframe computer, incredibly powerful and reliable, but with no distributed backups, no alternative operating systems ready to take over if the main server ever crashes. Here's the counterintuitive wow factor. The very fragmentation and darkness of the medieval period, often lamented in our history, might have been the crucible of unparalleled innovation. The competition between hundreds of warring feudal lords, the rivalries between independent city-states, the separate intellectual traditions of England, France, the Germanic lands, and Italy. This constant, high-stakes competition drove technological and intellectual advancement at an unprecedented rate. Each small kingdom sought an edge: better weapons, better ships, better fortifications, more efficient farming. The decentralized chaos of post-Roman Europe was not a regression. It was a societal, peer-to-peer network where ideas and innovations, even if suppressed in one region, could quickly find fertile ground in a rival state. An unbroken Roman Empire, however enlightened, would inevitably create a single, centralized truth and a singular, approved path for progress, potentially stifling the very competition that fueled much of human advancement. In this unbroken empire, the ultimate peril isn't external invasion, for the imperium is too vast, too powerful. It's the internal threat, the unforeseen pathogen, the silent enemy that leverages the very unity of the state against itself. Imagine a newly emergent plague, a viral agent with a terrifyingly short incubation period and a high mortality rate arising in a remote province. With the empire's vast, efficient road networks, its seamless global trade routes, and the constant movement of legions and bureaucrats, this pathogen would spread with terrifying speed. There are no uncontacted tribes or isolated populations to serve as natural fire breaks, no local governments to implement independent, potentially diverse quarantine strategies. The unified, interconnected human ecosystem of the Imperium becomes a single, vulnerable host. The initial 48 hours would be a nightmare of cascading failures. Official communication in Latin would struggle to reach remote outposts. The initial decrees, slow to disseminate across an entire planet, would be overwhelmed by the reality on the ground. Cities, once proud monuments to imperial order, would become epicenters of panic and death, their carefully planned grids turning into viral superhighways. Without the independent responses born of fragmented states, the entire apparatus of the state could seize up, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the biological catastrophe. Yet humanity, even under the eagle's shadow, is resilient. The initial catastrophe, if not apocalyptic, would force the Imperium to adapt. The centralized nature, once its weakness, would become its strength in recovery. Science, heretofore directed towards maintaining infrastructure and military might, would pivot entirely. The Imperial Academy would become a global center for virology and epidemiology, marshaling resources on a scale unimaginable in our fragmented world. New sanitation legions might emerge, enforcing stringent public health codes, mandatory quarantines, and perhaps even state-sponsored genetic research to cultivate resistance. The Codex Digitalis, once a tool for imperial decrees, would become a personalized health tracker, monitoring every citizen's biosigns and movements, a trade-off for survival. Society would become hyper-organized, ultra-hygienic, and perhaps deeply authoritarian. Individual liberties would be sacrificed for collective survival, justified by the memory of the Great Plague. New cities might be designed with integrated filtration systems, segregated living quarters, and automated pathogen detection. The Roman ideal of civic duty would be redefined, not just as loyalty to the emperor, but as vigilant adherence to public health protocols, a new form of imperial piety. The world would emerge safer, cleaner, and undeniably more controlled, a planet-spanning technocracy ruled by the shadow of a 2 millennia-old state. The enduring legacy of the Roman Empire in this alternate world is a profound and unsettling truth. Sometimes, the greatest progress comes not from continuity, but from collapse. The Dark Ages weren't a void. They were a fertile, chaotic compost heap from which new ideas, new nations, and new forms of human organization could sprout. An unbroken empire, however glorious, might become its own gilded cage, trading dynamism for stability, diversity for uniformity. The very act of decentralization, of breaking apart, allowed the seeds of different futures to take root and flourish. The human story, it seems, thrives on friction, on challenge, on the constant pressure to innovate and adapt against rivalries and uncertainties. It is a stark reminder that even the most enduring structures, while offering order, can also inadvertently stifle the very spark of progress they seek to contain. But this raises another question, equally profound. What if not an empire, but humanity itself never faced the challenge of scarcity? What if the resources of an entire galaxy were suddenly and endlessly available? What would become of ambition, innovation, and the very meaning of human striving if every need was instantly met, forever? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and most important, drop your wildest what-if idea in the comments. And be sure to ring the bell so you never miss a new video. See you in the next adventure. Don't miss it.